Hello, everyone. Welcome. Come on in to our live stream here of Beat the Algorithm, how top creators are building their communities on new platforms. I'm super excited to have this conversation. My name is Justine. I am the curator of content and events here at Wonderful. And if you aren't yet familiar with Wonderful, allow me to introduce you to our wonderful community. Wonderful is a global community and lifestyle brand that specializes in helping all women travel the world. And we connect our community both online and in person through a thriving online membership network, local chapter events in 50 cities and counting. We've got global summits and small group trips, and some of you might also know us. We're just coming back from our WITS Travel Creator Summit in Kansas City. So maybe some of you are joining in from that. While we connect travelers together, we are also focused on amplifying the voices of women and underrepresented people within the travel industry. And we're ultimately striving toward making this industry one that's more equitable, inclusive, and thoughtful. And as I mentioned, we've just returned from our WITS, our Travel Creator Summit, where we talked about so many of these different issues that are happening within the travel industry, particularly how it affects us as creators. And so really excited to have this conversation. What else did I want to share with you all before we get started? Of course, let's get social. Ironically, we're talking about how to get off social in this event, but we are still very active on all of our social media. So find us on Wonderful on Facebook at She's Wonderful, on Instagram also at She's Wonderful. Those are our main handles here, so I'll leave that for you. I also wanted to let you all know that we have an open membership month right now here at Wonderful. So this is a great way to connect with other travel-loving women right away, even if you're not traveling at this moment. From now until June 15th, you can sign up and get free 30 days of our membership. No credit card required. I put the link there. You should see it at the bottom, sheswonderful.com/open. And, we put on events just like this one multiple times per week. And members also have access to exclusive benefits, such as member-only discounts. We have access, you'll get access to other travel experts, coaching sessions, as well as our on-demand content library with recordings of our events, just like this one. So for those of you who aren't tuning in live, obviously you can watch this recording later. And so I highly, highly recommend you all join us. Again, you can join us until June 15th. You'll get 30 days free of our membership. You'll get access to all of the amazing benefits of the Wonderful community. And so again, our link here is sheswonderful.com/open. But for now, we've got so much to talk about. And so I want to get us straight into our conversation here. And I want to bring on stage our little virtual stage here. First, we have Danielle Desir. Hopefully I do this all properly. There's Danielle. And Danielle, let me put your handles on here. Danielle Corbett is a former grants administrator turned creative entrepreneur. She is a multi-passionate blogger, 4 times grant funded podcaster, and she is also the host of The Thought Card. Again, you'll see the links below there. The Thought Card is an affordable luxury travel and personal finance podcast empowering financially savvy travelers to travel more and build wealth. She's also recently built a new project, which is called Grants for Creators. And Danielle has been using her grant finding skills to curate a bi-weekly newsletter sharing the most relevant funding opportunities for creatives. Thanks so much for joining us, Danielle. Welcome.
Super excited. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Next up, we have here Kate, who's joining us all the way from Iceland.
Hello.
Kate McCully has been teaching women how to travel the world safely since 2010 through her site, adventurouskate.com. And, when the pandemic hit, she turned her content into a successful Patreon, and she now teaches creatives how to earn well through this platform, through Patreon. She loves political activism, literature, and thrift shopping. And she's originally from the Boston area. And now Kate is living in Prague in the Czech Republic, where she's trying to get back to at this moment. Thank you for joining us.
On the airport floor right now, but thrilled to be here.
Amazing. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
And of course, last but certainly not least, I think you will all recognize Beth Santos. Does she need an introduction at this point? Beth, of course, the CEO and founder of Wonderful, which I've already told you all about. She's the creator of the WITS Travel Creators Summit, speaking events for women and gender diverse travel creators. She's built a million other things, the Bessie Awards. She is now also the founder or owner of Ula Cafe. She's done so many different things, but of course she's here with us to talk about how she has built Wonderful's online community on a platform called Mighty Networks, which is the platform we use, we love, and so really excited to have this conversation with all of these different creators who are building communities on different platforms. If you're joining here today, you, I'm sure, have read the description of the event, but really we wanted to host this event because we're finding that these traditional social media sites, I find it funny to call social media traditional now, but it is in a sense now. These social media sites are relying so much more heavily on advertising and all of these constantly shifting algorithms. And so, many creators are now, we just came out of our WITS Travel Creator Summit where we were talking a lot about how do we beat the algorithm? How do we actually take control of our communities? And so I'm so glad to have Beth, Kate, Danielle here with us this morning, this afternoon, whatever time it is right now for you all, to talk about how you have built your communities in your respective platforms. And so I wanted to throw it to each one of you here. I wanted to ask you all to tell us a little bit more about your creator work and what platform you're using to share that work with your community. Tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing. Maybe I'll throw it to Danielle since I introduced you first. So come on.
Sure. So I started Grants for Creators in January of 2022. So it's a very new project. And it was something that I had on my mind for a really long time because I am always on the lookout for grants and other funding opportunities for myself as a creator and small business owner. And I would find tons of opportunities and I would apply for myself, but I'm like, I want to share with other people because there are plenty of people who I know could benefit from this as well. But the thought of creating a brand new website, the thought of having to create a logo and just hire a designer and spend hours on WordPress trying to put together a beautiful site was like so exhausting. So I decided to table that idea. So I've tabled it maybe for like 6 months. And while I was pregnant one day, I couldn't sleep at 3 a.m. The baby said, "Get up, mom, and go and create this thing. Start doing some research." So I started doing research to see what other travel content creators, because I'm in the travel space. I'm like, let me see what they're doing. And Substack came up pretty often. And there were actually a few Substack newsletters I was part of in the travel space. So I said, you know what? Let me see if I can do this. If it's easy enough to get done, can I spend 2 days working on this project? And I did. And I launched. And if you follow me on Twitter at the thought card, my pinned tweet is saying, "Oh my gosh, guys, I just launched a new project." And it was super messy and ugly, but 3 months, 4 months later, I have 1,000 subscribers now. So this project is going really strong and people are really excited about this work. So that's how I got started. Super messy, but I do really like Substack as a platform.
Danielle, can we have you make like a t-shirt that says "The baby made me do it"?
Literally 3 a.m. kicking me. Like, just get up and just get it done. Just get it done. I'm really happy I did, though. I'm happy I listened to him.
Love that.
That's amazing to hear how quickly that's grown. Amazing. Beth, you were unmuted. Do you want to share what we do?
Yeah, no, totally. And then Kate, I'll let you take over after that. So my journey into, we, as Justine mentioned, Wonderful has a membership community that we launched on Mighty Networks. And I'll be honest, the thing that I love and sometimes hate about this job is that we are literally building the industry that we operate in, like, every day. And I think so many people have asked me, oh, Wonderful. So, like, what's your business model? Because there wasn't really one when we started. We started as a blog in 2009. The first payment we ever got was like a $4 payment on the Blog Her ad network that we had gotten. And we were like, what are we going to do with this money? There's so much of it. And I think we really, for the first couple of years, kind of struggled of like, how are we monetizing this? And, what is the way to move this forward? And can you like make an actual business out of this? And we ran events for a long time and still do, and absolutely love them. But it was actually during the pandemic that we really leaned into membership. And I think we kind of felt that there was this need for, will like give you total straight talk. The pandemic came, a whole bunch of our sponsors for our in-person events pulled out, and we were left going, how are we going to keep this business alive? And we kind of realized, a couple things at the same time. The first was that the same day that the sponsors were pulling out, I logged into this member platform that we had been playing with and noticed that the engagement in that platform had just skyrocketed. And basically what had happened was, while all the sponsors were running out of money, all the travelers were getting their trips canceled, and they really missed travel, and they just wanted to be part of something, and they wanted to be part of a community. And I think that's when we kind of realized, like, we need to make this shift into membership. And it just so happened to be this really great time in the wave of membership communities that platforms like Mighty Networks and now Circle started. They didn't even exist, a few years ago. And when they did, they were so early that, the tricky part about membership communities is you're sort of relying on somebody else's technology to serve the needs of your business. And if the technology isn't good enough, you're kind of blamed for it, even though it's not yours. And so we had explored membership a few times in the past and just never found the right technology for it. And I think it was this kind of perfect moment, perfect storm of a time when we just leaned fully into it. And it's been really successful for us up until that point. But yeah, so I have so much to say about this conversation. I'm looking forward to continuing it. But Kate, I'll let you go.
I run a site called, I run a site called Adventurous Kate. I specialize in blogging about solo and independent travel for women. And I've been doing this for a long time. I think I'm pretty much considered a geriatric in this industry by now, because I've been at it for 12 years, 37 years old now. And over the years, I've been creating lots of resources that help women travel solo safely if they're looking forward, and just share my own experiences to show them the truth about what it is actually like. And in the blog over the years, I have covered 83 different countries and all 7 continents. Yep, even wrote about traveling solo in Antarctica, not just like alone on a thing of ice, but just on a cruise with a bunch of people who just happen to go alone. But over the years, I've been through so many different changes with the blog. The blog has always been the biggest, most important place where I do my work. But of course, there's a lot of social media as well. There's Facebook, there's Instagram, there's Twitter, all that. But most importantly for me is Patreon, is what I'm using now, which is a paid platform, which is basically a way to give special extra content to your super fans. Because I guarantee each one of you, if you have an audience, you've got some super fans in there. And that is definitely a wonderful way to be creating content these days. But we'll get more into that, I'm sure, when we start going over the platforms.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you all, you have all seemed to have made this shift pretty recently. Was it like within the last couple of years, few years? So I wanted to ask, like, what exactly prompted you to make that shift? What happened? What changed? Or what did you feel called to do? I mean, Danielle, I know the baby made you do it, but what was it that really made you consider shifting your platform? or at least starting on a new platform in addition to everywhere else you are currently?
So I can go first. I'll start off to say that I wanted to create a project that was funded. I've done so many projects in the past where I'm just putting ideas out there, hoping one day that I can eventually quit my job and do this full time. And I'm at the point where I have to start to strategically think smarter if I want my creative ideas to have longevity. So, off the back, I knew that it takes me about 8 hours a week to find grants. And if I'm going to expand my horizon to find grants for creators, which is more than just me as a blogger and podcaster, it's going to take me even more time. So there's no way that I can do this without having a paywall. And I was looking for a platform that had a built-in paywall for people who do want to support me, and who do want to see this project continue. However, also offer free content as well. So have it be like a lead magnet, a lead in for a growing and thriving business. So I was thinking strategically about scalability and monetization because I knew that there's no way I can do this, spend so many hours without having some funds coming in eventually. So that was a big motivator for me.
Kate, why'd you get on Patreon? You told us a little bit, but
Well, I had been thinking about it a bit for a few months, I think. I've seen some different people try out Patreons, and I was like, you know what? I have a really engaged audience. My super fans are super fans. I bet it would do well. But for me, the big catalyst was COVID, which of course was a big catalyst for so many people, especially in the travel space, an industry that just evaporated overnight. And I remember in March 2020, getting toward the end of the month, seeing my daily display income go down further and further and further and further until it was only making less than 10% of what it had been making day by day. It was pretty wild. I needed income streams and I needed them fast. So I actually tried a bunch of different things at once. I started doing these fun consulting and fun calls called one-on-ones with Adventurous Kate. I started a book club. I started like Zoom meetings at night called Traveler's Night In. Well, tried what we would like talk about things with a theme like road trips or traveling in Europe, that whole kind of thing. And then there was the Patreon. And I know that one of my strengths as a creator is writing interesting stories about travels that people feel really involved in. They especially love the really personal stuff. So I thought for me, one thing that would be great would be to tell more of these stories from my life. And I would have different pay tiers for these. And the basic pay tier, which would get the stories, would be $6 per month. I can give you some more Patreon tips on getting more specifically and, everything I've learned. One of the biggest mistakes that people make is having like a $1 tier per month. Be like, just to support me. No, $1 tier is going to earn you nothing. And the thing, what really surprised me is how eagerly so many of my readers jumped in to be fans. We also have a private Facebook group for ourselves now. And those I say mostly girls, it's mostly girls, but they are some of the most supportive and amazing people, and having their support is just incredible.
Yeah, thank you. Beth, I know we have similar histories with COVID, but we were on Mighty Networks prior to COVID. So what was the thinking there?
We were, and I think that, definitely, like Kate was saying, we saw so much change during the pandemic that kind of forced us to lean into the Mighty Network even more. But we had launched our Mighty Network earlier. And I honestly think that, some of it was just kind of thinking back on like my business school education, to be totally honest. I went to business school in 2014 and got my MBA in 2016 sometime, and just before I had a kid too, Danielle. And I think it was during that time, content creators didn't really see themselves as small business owners for a really long period of time. And just now I was telling everybody before we started, like, we went to WITS in Kansas City, and so many people now really see themselves as entrepreneurs, as founders, as business owners. And it wasn't always that way. And I think that always kind of bothered me a little bit. And especially even just looking at myself and looking at Wonderful, I saw the content that we were creating, and I knew that there was an opportunity to to make that into my full-time career, and to build a team and to do some really neat stuff together. And I wasn't really sure the best way to do it. And I think when I started the Mighty Network, it was coming from, we had tried a couple of different platforms before. There's all sorts of membership communities that are like integrated with WordPress and integrated with, even like Squarespace has stuff now. And again, it always just came down to the technology of it just not serving the needs of what we wanted. And we actually had a membership community in like probably the early, maybe 2016, that was just not really doing what it needed to do. But there are a couple of wonderful members that today call themselves like the earliest members ever, because they like existed like 3 different membership platforms down the line. And then it was like, $5 a month, and you get access to, I don't know what, deals and discounts. And I think we really had to kind of refine it over the years. But ultimately it was kind of looking at ourselves more as a business and making that mental shift that made us think about how, the content that we were creating did have value, and that we were creating something that was very valuable for other people, and that people did want to support us if we asked in the right way. And we sort of explained, how our business worked and what we needed. Oh, Penny's like, I wrote an article for the blog. Yeah, you did. And so I think that, I won't say, and I know we'll talk about this later, I won't say people are always happy to pay. I do think that there's some teaching that needs to be done with consumers on how you need to invest in the types of businesses that you want to see. But I think we were really looking for something that was a little bit more lasting. We wanted our business to sustain itself based on our community. We wanted to answer to our community. And the best way to do that was have them actually be like the investors in what we were building. And so those thoughts started coming when we stopped really looking at ourselves as just creating content for content's sake, and actually creating value and community. And in that way, kind of building a business.
Thank you all for sharing that. Yeah, I'm a creator myself, and I have been seeing a lot of this shift towards these other platforms. And I'm curious, there's a lot now, we're talking about Mighty Network, Substack, and Patreon, but there are also other newsletter subscription type platforms. There's, Clubhouse recently came up, and there's Spaces now on Twitter. There's a lot of different spaces or platforms that are out there now. And I'm curious, what made you choose the particular platform that you chose? And if you could also share, for those who are tuning in, how would you recommend our community members to make this decision for themselves? What should they consider before, leaping onto Patreon or Substack or Mighty Networks? What are some of those considerations to take? And what were those considerations for you, and why you ultimately chose what platform you're on? Whoever wants to answer. Yeah, Kate.
For me, it was always going to be Patreon, just because I knew it felt like the gold standard. And still to this day, it still kind of feels like the gold standard of having a membership platform for creators, even though I feel like Substack is kind of like the cool new kid who's becoming an adolescent or so these days. But I do think some considerations that you're going to do is that if you're going to have a platform that charges people every month, Patreon also offers an option to charge people per creation if you don't want to charge on a monthly basis. Do you have the bandwidth to create this extra content for people? Are you able to fit that into the work that you're already doing? How would you break down how much would you need to earn to actually make it worthwhile? And also, do you have enough things in your life that you would be able to draw from and actually create from in the first place? So I think that's probably the most important thing that you can start with. I do think that one thing that a lot of creators do kind of get wound up in is talking about, who would ever support me on Patreon? Who would ever pay for my stuff? Because I guarantee you have more big fans than you think. And a lot of the people that come out of the woodwork would surprise you. I was surprised by how many people from my hometown, from high school, who I don't talk to ever, came out as being like, oh, I love your stuff. Yeah, I'd love to support you on Patreon too. you've definitely got some big fans there. But you do need to have an audience, period. I mean, Patreon's not something that you start like in a vacuum as a brand new creative.
Yeah, that's a great point. I want to get to that shortly. Danielle, why Substack?
So I really wanted to try something that was easy to get ramped up, and that if it wasn't going to work, fail fast and move on. So I didn't want to spend hours and hours creating something and trying to make it super perfect when I wasn't really sure if this was going to actually be a sustainable income model and income stream in business. So I really liked that Substack was very easy to use. It was super simple and basic, and I didn't have to do a lot of design stuff. I think that trips me up. Like, I don't have a design. I have an eye for what looks nice, but to create a logo and do all this crazy stuff, like, I just did not have the bandwidth and capacity. And also I was expecting mom as well. So the energy level was just not there. So I just really liked that it was just simple to and easy to use. And they were geared towards newsletters, and they were geared towards writers and authors and bloggers. So that was the target audience. So I said, let me just give it a try. And it definitely lived up to expectations. It was very easy. I spent 2 days of just like coming up with my content, and I was ready to launch by day 3.
That's great advice. That's really great. Yeah, great thinking of what can you just put out there. Minimum viable product. I love that. Beth, why Mighty Networks?
Well, and so I have a couple things to say that are related or maybe not related, but like to connect the last question with this one too, which is, I think the other reason that kind of like got me into Mighty Networks was because up until that point, we had been really focused on like the blog and on social media. And kind of like Kate was saying, when Kate, you were saying like, you know, you lost a lot of your income when the pandemic happened. It was like suddenly realizing that like outside forces had such a big impact on my ability to build this business was really frustrating for me. And sometimes those outside forces were not international pandemics. They were Facebook just decided to change how it wanted to feature X, Y, or Z thing. And I kind of, I think, had a moment to myself where I was just sort of sick of it. And I just didn't want to constantly be following every little detail on, okay, how do I maximize each social channel that I'm on? And, you know, what are the changes that we need to make to our strategy? And, you know, I think the people who have been able to do that are absolutely brilliant. I don't think I'm that brilliant, and I can't follow that stuff that fast. And I was just really tired of feeling like I was doing really good work, but people weren't seeing it because of somebody else's decision. And that's when actually, before even going into the membership community, the thing I started focusing more on was just building our email list. Because for me, email is like the most important thing you can have. You know, if you have somebody's email address, then you have direct access to them and direct access to their inbox, and you can sell them stuff. And so I'm kind of thinking about that. If you're thinking of making the switch into one of these platforms, I actually think maybe one of the first things you should be doing is looking at your email strategy too. And how are you, you know, capitalizing on that? And I'm like using kind of like hard business words like capitalizing, but I think how are you getting people, you know, off of the social platforms and into your world so that you can access them when you want to? And so our Facebook group became a way to just tell people that our email list even existed. And the people who really wanted to be part of our community would then sign up, you know, on their own. And then once we had their attention a little bit more, we were able to then move into things like membership. And so I think that looking at it like from that perspective of a funnel was really, really important to all of this. And I think, you know, if somebody did want to start a membership community, it is definitely, I mean, Memberfold, I saw Ketty's comment. Mighty Networks and Circle are both probably like the more involved side of the spectrum here. If you're building out a membership community, especially with Mighty Networks, there's a lot going on in there. There's events that you can host. There's topics that you can have. You can keep it light, but the problem with membership is, and these specific membership platforms, in a virtual space is that they do kind of compete with like Facebook groups, which are free. So you have to have a really, really clear value of what you're offering early on so that people know why they're paying for that versus just going to a free Facebook group. And there's a number of reasons, but I think having like really clear understanding and really clear messaging. And then I also think, having a financial conversation with yourself of how much money do you actually need to make this work? How much time do you have to put this in? And I think knowing that it might be, at least for like an online membership community, it might be a little bit slow going, because for us, a lot of the value that people get out of being wonderful members comes from having other people also be wonderful members. Like the network effect factor is very important. So if somebody joins and there's only 5 members there, they're not getting as much out of it as if there's 5,000 members. And so we had to kind of create a pricing scale that allowed people to come in fast and early, just so that they could start creating value for each other. So I think definitely, like, compared to some of the other options out there, if you're going membership community, there's a little bit more upfront work and a little bit of a longer lead time that you're going to really want to think through. And you're also going to want to figure out, what is that value that I'm providing that's keeping people going here rather than just signing up for a Facebook group or a free community.
Those are really great considerations. A lot to think about, and you all mentioned this or touched upon it. Beth, you were talking about the funnel, and Kate, you were talking about, how you do need an audience before, you can start a Patreon or a membership community or a newsletter. You need to have that community or that audience who will actually opt into that network or that platform. And so I wanted to ask you all, how much time do you spend right now, priming that audience or cultivating that audience, maybe on social media, probably on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, if you're there, at that top of the funnel? How much time do you spend priming that or developing that audience versus the content that you're producing on these exclusive membership or, paywalled platforms? What does that look like? How do you balance those two?
That's a very good question, because I can't ever remember not nurturing my audience and spending so much time nurturing my audience, talking with them, talking about things that didn't necessarily make me money. I was doing this long before I had any kind of business strategy or even any kind of income from the blog. It's just talking to your audience and being nice, and so I don't know, it's kind of hard to quantify that time, because I just feel like that's just a little thing you do all the time. Mm-hmm. And I did kind of want to add to what Beth was saying before about funnels, and that it's like you do have tiers of fans. I think that the very bottom tier, you've got like somebody who casually comes on your site through search. And then you have the people who have to become a social media follower. Okay, that's good. Then you have the newsletter followers, free newsletter, not paid. And the free newsletter, yes, those are very good people. Those are people who say, I like you so much, I want you to be in my email inbox where all the important shit is. And then on top of that, you have all the people who are willing to pay more for membership. And those are the best of the best. And then if you have like a $2,000 coaching program, I suppose that would go above that. But yeah.
I think that's a good point, though, because the one big mistake that I think people can make with this is they think, everybody has to become a paid member. And that's not the case. Like, to that point of funnel, there are people who are just going to follow you. And that's great. That's fine. They're supporting your work. You're supporting what they're doing, having conversations. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think, when we're talking about getting our community to want to start paying for that and kind of nurturing them, there are people who are going to receive those messages well. There are people who are never going to receive those messages. And I think, there is a process along the way of that nurture, of kind of teaching people, here's how I grow my business. Here's how you can support me. Here's the value that I can offer to you. But everybody is valuable. And I think the most important thing that you can really do is, I think in a lot of our email marketing, we think about like who will just never become a member, and that's okay, but we can use them in other ways, right? Maybe they want to spread the word about something. Maybe they're just a really big fan of what you do and they're going to share it with a friend. Maybe they're just going to be eyeballs and watching you and supporting you and, you know, cheering from the sidelines. And that's great. And like, you have to really focus on customizing your messaging so that people who want to be sold to, like, that's one thing that we do a lot of is I don't like asking people to be a member who don't want to be asked. Like, that's one thing that I don't know, maybe everybody's like that. Maybe it's just me, but I really don't like feeling like a salesperson. I think what we offer is really amazing. I think people who sign up love it, but I don't want to be that person who's in your inbox, like, buy my thing, buy my thing, buy my thing. So I spend a lot of time really thinking through who is really interested in hearing this message. And oftentimes we ask them to opt in. We do like enrollment webinars where we say, if you want to learn about Wonderful membership, come to this webinar and we will tell you about it. But I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time in your inbox being like, sign up, sign up, sign up. And I think having a deeper understanding of who your audience is and giving them, you know, maybe they're not going from I'm following you on Twitter to I'm signing up to be a member. There's a process along the way where you're sort of asking their permission and they're giving you that permission to tell you more. And I think that's when they're working up that funnel of signing up for emails and then maybe signing up for a course or a webinar and then signing up for a long-term thing. So I think you have to think about it from like smaller steps.
Yeah, I like that. I wanted to add to it, but Danielle, I want you to share what you, if you've got something to share here.
Yeah, I think for me with, you know, this was a brand new project, brand new idea. It was about leveraging the platforms that I felt comfortable talking about my project. And that is absolutely Twitter. And Twitter is a place where I can be super vulnerable. And literally my pin tweet was like, guys, I almost like freaked out because I did something new. And people were just rallying and just excited. And I think it's important, at least for this paid newsletter, to, like Beth said, offer value and offer something that people needed. Like, I knew that other creators were looking for funding because I'm looking for funding as a creator. So I was willing to bridge that gap for them. So that was awakening for me. Just leaning into the social platforms and leveraging them, like Twitter, and just saying, hey, here's my newsletter. Another thing that I discovered is that this idea is kind of like new and novel in a way. So I knew that there were going to be people who were interested, but not necessarily willing to part ways with funds yet. So at my top of my newsletter, actually, about 20% of my newsletter is always free content. So you're always going to get some free grants, because just to see, like, oh, this is what Danielle offers. But she mentioned she has 20 grants in this newsletter. What other 20? What else is there? Yeah. So I think doing creative things like this, where you offer value, even if the most of it is in the paywall, but it's that consistency, like everyone's talking about, being there in their inbox, doing what you say you're going to do, that I think is really important. Also, speaking engagements, just like this, it's part of like what I do, but I'm spreading the word about my projects. So speaking engagements, Twitter, and just being able to offer some free content at the beginning of each newsletter has been really helpful to grow. Also, because it was a novel concept, a lot of people picked it up on their newsletters and they shared it for me. So I was like, oh, this is great. So newsletters is a great way to promote your newsletter. So email marketing, like we mentioned, is really important. And I found that converts really well as that.
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure we shared your newsletter.
I saw, yeah. It's wow.
Strategy.
Yeah,
for sure.
It was great. It was really, really great.
Yeah. And I just wanted to echo, Beth, what you were saying earlier as well about, all of what you're saying in terms of still offering this free content, Danielle. It's something that I, as a creator, as someone who has her own business, I'm trying to find the balance of like, strategically, what can I offer for free that will get people on board? And the other stuff that is, so much more of value that you do need to pay for, that is, my labor and my time. But I just also wanted to add to Beth, what you were saying earlier. Oh my gosh, there's so many things that I'm like, oh, yes, yes, yes. Now I'm like losing it. But, what you were saying earlier about different audience members. And I just wanted to kind of confirm or validate that, in the sense that a lot of my followers on social media are not part of my Patreon or my newsletter, but a lot of them still are avid followers and pass opportunities like speaking opportunities for me. And so knowing that there are different community members, different audience members who have offerings, or there's a way for you to engage with them in different ways, I think is really important to remember. And so while, this is a Beat the Algorithm event, and while I often talk about how frustrating it is to be on social media right now, there is still definitely a value, and, getting those eyeballs, getting visibility on these platforms is also still important. And I want to open up, I have a lot of questions, but I do also want to open up to our audience here. So if you have any questions for our panelists, please drop them in the chat. I want to bring up this one from the PTO Nomad, who teaches or creates travel content that teaches queens in corporate America to travel the world boldly. And they asked, what strategy did you use to prime your audience to begin paying for your products? What was the strategy there?
Well, I'll go first because, like I mentioned earlier, payment was part of the launch. And I think that can be important depending on the types of projects that you have. I have had other projects where I started off free and then transitioning to paid was very difficult, very difficult. But I feel like if you have a new project, you can launch paid and see how it goes. And literally the market will tell you if they perceive your product or your offering as valuable. So for me, people did say, okay, I want to pay and contribute. So it was a clear path for me. But it is a tricky question. But I would say if you want to start paid, because it will be very difficult. It can be very difficult to transition from free to paid sometimes.
I agree with that. I think when we launched our paid community, so we actually, to the point I made earlier of, for us, because we're focusing on an online network, part of the value is the fact that there's other people in the network. So one of the things that we did first actually is that we opened up, sorry, everybody who's paying, we opened up membership for free for like a very short period of time. When we first launched, we were like, if you get in now, you will have membership free for life, but you have to do it now. And there are some people who are very lucky who are in the wonderful member community now who have like free lifetime membership because they were literally the first people to sign up. And that was our way of just kind of seeding the platform with people. And then after that, we introduced an introductory pricing. So for most people, it came in as a paid product. And I think to Danielle's point, it was really important to explain, what they were paying for and why, and to have it be different than what we were doing before. Like you haven't been able to really connect with other people online before. Now you can with this platform. And for us, actually, we started from a place of really low pricing, and then we increased it slowly along the way as we got more traction, because we found that early on, it wasn't as easy. Right now, our membership is $29 a month for travelers. And I think in the very beginning, when you're first starting out, people might be like, what am I paying for again exactly? So we sort of had these tiers of, free, like super limited, very early users, then like low price. And then, we kind of hit our stride of what we actually believe that, we should be charging for it. And I think that's really helped us because the value did increase along the way. When somebody signed up at $5 a month, they weren't getting nearly as much value as people who are signing up now are getting, because that stuff wasn't built yet. And it was like, I think of those people as sort of early investors that kind of signed up and got to watch everything grow, but it wasn't all there. And so the pricing kind of had to reflect that. And they just had to trust that we were going to build it along the way. So I think, if you're trying to introduce a paid product, I think, really looking at it from the user side of the house of what value are they exactly getting? What are they paying for? You can always increase your price later. It's really hard to decrease your price once you've set it without making a bunch of people mad who already paid. So I would kind of take a little bit of time and really look at what is that value, and then make sure that you're communicating very outright of, here's what you're paying for and why, you weren't getting it before, and how doing this can, give you so much more. And by the way, and this is the last thing I'll say and I'll stop, which is, I also think there's a lot of value in just being, Danielle does a really good job of doing this on Twitter, of just being like really authentic and honest about your own journey, being like, this is my business. I am a small woman-owned business. You are not paying for, a huge international conglomerate with thousands of employees and like limitless budget. When you spend money on me, you are making sure that what this work is can continue. And so you are part of this. And I think like having really good clarity on that messaging is really important and speaks really well to your audiences.
I think for me, a huge part of it that was able to convert people into paying customers would be just being so vulnerable so much of the time, and also being very honest about things, particularly in the travel space. The number one thing that I hear from my readers is, you're so honest. And that's because like when I visit an attraction, my honest comments can be ranging from, well, yeah, these ruins, go if you're really into ruins. If you're not into ruins, you can skip them. Or it can range up to like the beaches on the Aeolian Islands. Why does every guide say that this is the best beach in the Aeolian Islands? This beach is awful. It is terrible. Dude, there's no reason to go there. So I do think that through honesty and vulnerability, people were able to connect with me as the personality, as far as it went on, as their fandom went on long term. And when COVID hit and I was in a tight spot and I was completely honest about how much my income had fallen, and that's why I was doing a Patreon, so many people were eager to jump in and become part of it. In fact, I support several creators on Patreon and other paid forms. One is even this journalist in Arkansas, because he's been the top reporter on the Josh Duggar case, and Josh is getting sentenced like right now as we do this thing. And just because he's been doing so much good journalism, and like all of us wanted to thank him for doing that.
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, we have a lot of questions here, but I wanted to also just jump on what you were saying earlier about the super fans. This was from an earlier comment, but super fans that you all already have, if you have been building, your blog or your, the content on your social media platforms, I think you'd be surprised, like what Kate was saying, that you have super fans already who see the value in your work as is and would be willing to pay. Of course, there are lots of people who might be new to your community that you do need to prime, but there are a lot of people who already see the value in your work. That's the reason why they follow you. That's probably why they're signed up to your free newsletter already. And so making this ask is not too far a leap. And so offering these different levels, like on Patreon, that's what I love, offering various levels of payment based on what your financial ability is a great way for your supporters to support you, because they are your supporters. But we have some questions here. Food Travelist. Beth made a great point that these platforms are owned by someone else. Have any of you ever used a paywall on your own website for premium content on your actual website?
I paid for a plugin to do it, but I never actually worked on it. So they do exist. It was Wishlist Member, and that's one that you can do. I know one thing that a lot of people do is, especially people who run Mediavine or other display ad networks, they offer an ad-free version of their site to the people who pay for it.
Oh, that's interesting. We had explored the idea, and I will be brief because I don't have a whole lot to say about it, but I will say that the only sites that I have subscribed to, and maybe I'm just a terrible person, are ones where I have hit that paywall so many times. I mean, like probably like 100 times before I actually signed up and paid for it. And so just from my own experience, I was kind of like, how many people are actually going to have that experience where they've now visited 100 times and have been blocked and just want to do it? So I think for us, it was something that it just wasn't the right decision for us to do it that way. And we decided to do it elsewhere. And I think it is a good point that I didn't make, which was you are still on somebody else's algorithm technically, unless you've literally built the whole thing yourself, but I think you do have a little bit more say with these communities. We have a direct line of communication with the Mighty Networks team. We know who they are, we are customers of theirs. And I think that gives us a little bit more control, I feel, and they don't focus so much on algorithms. But yeah, I don't know, Justine or Danielle, if either of you have used Paywalls.
If I have to do a lot of work, I'm so adverse to it. Like, I'm just like, I just want to get something up and easy to use. So I don't mind splitting my profit with the platform that's helping me create this paid space. So investing in your tech is really important, and trying out different tech. Like, I tried different other platforms, but it wasn't as easy as this one. So yeah, easy. Whatever is easy to me helps so much more.
I'm a bit of a different kind of creator. For anyone who's interested, I have a magazine called Living Hyphen. And so, yeah, very premium content. You have to pay for the print product. So not related to this, but I guess in a sense that is a paywall on my end. There's a question here for you, Kate, from Ketty. Do you have any thoughts on Patreon versus Memberfold?
To be honest, I'm not familiar with Memberfold, so I couldn't really tell you about that. I know a lot of people use Buy Me a Coffee as a Patreon alternative, so there's another one. Yeah.
We actually just started using Memberfold, so I don't know if, and maybe Kate, you and I can somehow come to a thing here, because we don't have a Patreon. For us, Memberfold is actually what we use to coordinate into our Mighty network, and I love it. But I'm not sure technically how it would work for a Patreon style experience. But for us, I will say, if you are focused on some sort of membership based experience, Memberfold has a really nice interface. Their analytics are really good. And the purchasing, the other thing that is things you think about when you run a membership based community is the transaction itself has to be easy. I cannot tell you how many times, we had a really good product, we were sharing it really well, people loved it, and then they literally got to the point of purchase and they were like, too much work, and they left. And so I actually do think for a membership-based community, Memberful has really figured out a good model. But I didn't know that they were in the same space as Patreon, honestly. For me, they're more of a membership sign-up platform, which I guess Patreon also sort of is, but I think they're slightly different.
Yeah. I guess for all of us, both creators and consumers, if it's too much work, we don't want to do it. We've got another question here. It's a great question from Ariel. How do you decide what you put behind the paywall and what you release publicly for free? What goes into that consideration?
For me, for the newsletter, I committed to offering at least 20% of any newsletter offering always free. So that was something that I decided within myself. I said, there are probably people within this space that really do need the funding that may not have the $5 a month or may not have the $60 a year. So I want to be able to still serve them in a smaller capacity. So for me, that was my principle that I have for my business and my brand. From time to time, I do release a newsletter that's completely free that may have 15 grants. Just to remind folks that I know what I'm doing and I'm really good at finding grants. But for me, I just had a principle and I'm just going to stick by it. And that feels good to me. That feels really good that I can still offer something valuable for free, even if it's on a smaller capacity.
For me, a lot of what I share in the more personal thing, on the subscription stuff, I mean, again, I am the product. It's just Adventurous Kate. This is Adventurous Kate's life. But a lot of the stuff that is more vulnerable, a lot of stuff that I would like discussing with a small group of nice people, but maybe not the giant masses, that's the kind of thing. One of the biggest posts, in fact, probably the biggest post ever on Patreon, was when I was in Croatia last year. And we were standing in a big group, and this Dutch woman turns to me and says in front of everybody, "Oh, you're expecting a baby." And I had to respond with, "Nope, just fat, just fat, just fat," and going on from there. And that created like such a big discussion, and yeah, on from there. But I wouldn't put that on Adventurous Kate itself. Although I did put in I always do like a best moments of the year and worst moments of the year at the end of the year. And the worst moments of the year, I just put the Dutch lady in Croatia. People on my Patreon know what I'm talking about.
It's an inside. Yeah, it's an inside
The insider
conversation,
scoop.
right?
Yeah. I like that. Then you get everybody jealous. No,
I get
yeah.
more signups when I do that.
You do. You definitely do. I think, yeah, for us, it's a little bit different because what we're offering is different, you know, the membership versus the like blog and the other content. But I did want to respond to Ketty because I saw what you put on the screen, Justine, about Memberfold versus Patreon. And Ketty, this is what I also did a quick Google search. Now I understand better. Here's the difference that you're going to find. If you want to do Memberfold, you have to be prepared to do a lot more like technical integration. So Patreon basically sets up your platform for you. So it's going to be an easier solution. Memberfold is basically giving you the ability to charge a subscription, but then you're going to have to build everything else after that. So you do have to create the membership based, you know, portion of your site that you're then sending the people on Memberfold to, for example, you know, so it just depends on it. Memberfold is a little bit more of like a white label. And so it's going to take a little bit more setup versus Patreon is people know what it is. It's Patreon. You don't have to really explain it. And yeah, and I think just to the question of, you know, what's paid and what's not, I think you do need to create a rule for yourself and have a very clear understanding of why is somebody paying for this thing and what, you know, at what point is this thing a paid thing and this thing a free thing? Because you want to have very clean delineations because other people are going to ask you that question. You have to be able to answer it. So if you're just like, oh, I don't know, sometimes it's just whatever, then it's not going to help. If you say, well, if you're in my paid group, you're getting the insider scoop and all the really good stories, you know, that's a thing. If you're saying you're getting access to other people who, you know, you can talk with and meet with, that's a thing. But I think there has to be like a very clear differentiation between the two.
Thanks, Beth. Yeah. Well, we have 3 minutes left, and I don't think I got through half of my questions that I prepared here. So much to talk about, so much that I know that a lot, you know, we've got such an engaged audience here who have asked a lot of really, really great questions about how, you know, the strategy behind getting on these new and different platforms. And we only have 2 minutes left now, but I wanted to share with you all that this Beat the Algorithm event will be an extended series that we hope to host across time over the next few months, where every month we're hoping to focus on a specific platform. So Substack, Patreon, Mighty Networks, Clubhouse, all of these other spaces that you can be getting involved or starting your own communities or building your own communities on. That's something that we hope to share with you more on the specifics of each of these platforms. This was a top level discussion on why we need to start investing in our own communities on other platforms outside of traditional social media. But hopefully we will get into the nitty gritty, the more technical aspects, the more specific considerations before jumping on specific platforms over the next few months. So I really encourage you all to join. I want to share again that from now until June 15th, you can sign up for the Wonderful community and get free 30 days of Wonderful's membership, no credit card required. The link is sheswonderful.com/open. And I want to thank again our panelists here for sharing their expertise and all of the work that they've been doing on these different platforms. Amazing to hear from each of you. I also wanted to just share some other can't miss events over the next few weeks. On Wednesday, June 8th, we have our blogging mastermind circle with Amanda Watkins. We have an Instagram mastermind circle with Christine Lazota on June 9th. And on June 10th, we have a very special panel called The Realities of Quote Unquote Mompreneurship, which is real talk with some of our travel creator moms within the community. So if those are of interest to you, again, highly recommend that you join our membership community. You'll get free access to these events, and we hope to see you again. And to our panelists, Kate, Danielle, Beth, thank you so much for sharing so much information with us. I know that this will be a continued conversation that we have over the next few months, years, and whatnot as this landscape changes. So again, thank you all in the audience for joining us. Have a good rest of your day and week. We will see you again very, very soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.